All right, and welcome to the Call to Cinema. My name is Aaron, and this was originally going to be a pre-taped short video, but I thought the best thing to do was to get your opinion on this as well. I reached out to a couple of my friends. It's a little early for them to come on, but we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But we are going to be talking about bootleg Blu-rays today, and this doesn't come out of nowhere. This is not a wholly original idea. But I've been watching some videos about it, and it's really, really interesting. I saw some good stuff. So I just finished watching around 20 minutes ago, Mid-Level Media, who did a really, really good video on bootleg Blu-rays, as did Films at Home. And there is another YouTuber out there that I wasn't as familiar with that talked about it. So I do want to give him credit there as well if I can find him. AJ's Movie Place. Yeah, he did a really good video as well. So there has been a debate going back and forth on how do you feel about buying bootlegs, and it's not a cut and dry thing. Hey there, Death Bomb. Welcome, man. Hopefully, you'll give me your opinion on your thoughts here on how you feel about bootleg Blu-rays. And I think when you're talking about this, you really got to kind of categorize exactly what we're going with, because there's different aspects of this whole argument. I agree with Mid-Level Media in that it's not a cut and dry type of thing. Definitely not as cut and dry as you might kind of assume it would be initially. So the argument going on right now is, and it's been a pretty big one. Apparently it blew up on, was it Twitter or Instagram? I didn't see that because social media, especially recently, I've been trying to keep my distance a little bit more aside from here. But it's been debated on whether the kind of like moral or kind of legal issues, I guess, when it comes to buying Blu-rays that are bootlegs, that are of stuff that's not readily available, that's not out there. Hey there, Joseph, welcome, man. Or buying something along the lines. So say if like Disney has a show like, I guess, The Mandalorian, or something along the lines of maybe Only Murders in the Building that doesn't have a release, a physical media release. Do people feel okay with buying that? So Death Bomb has mentioned something right away that I want to say at the gate. When back in the times of VHS, I remember Video Search Miami, which was pretty much, that's what they were. They were bootlegs for stuff that didn't get releases. And I had a few. I had Massacre Time back then. I had most of the Argentos that hadn't come across to Canada. And aside from Massacre Time, which, well, I don't no longer have the VHS, but I eventually want to pick it up because it's got one from Arrow. I replaced every single bootleg that I ever had back in that day, because you just couldn't get those movies with copies of when Anchor Bay came about, because that's when we started to see Dario Argento coming out on first on VHS and then on DVD, and et cetera, et cetera. Needless to say, I have replaced my bootlegs several times. So I've rebought them many times. I have a Spanish bootleg Blu-ray of the Fearless Vampire Killers. I'm pretty sure that's the only way to get that, isn't it? Last Avenger. And here's where we get into the whole thing. But I'm not going to judge somebody for having like a bootleg or bootlegs in their collection. If they want a physical media copy of something that's not already out, like who am I to do that, right? But if it's out and you got it just because, if it's something that's in the store that you can grab anyway, and you just go grab a bootleg copy of it, I'm iffy on that. And I know that there's some bootleggers out there that, and I don't want to go into specifics, but don't only just take the film, but they actually take other people's artwork to use for their covers, for their without giving them any type of credit. And that hits me the wrong way. That was something that was a bit of a debate a while back that I did see on social media, was that there was somebody out there that sold a lot of bootleg material, and he went out and took somebody's art for one of his Blu-rays and didn't acknowledge them, and got put on blast by that person, and it became this big thing back and forth. So you get into that aspect of it as well, because all of a sudden we're not just looking at a bootleg film. We're looking at how that bootleg film has been packaged. Have they just gone into Google image search and downloaded like art without like checking for if the art's available or not? But as for the itself, so basically, guys, what it comes to, when you're buying a bootleg, most of the time, what you're doing is somebody's found or gotten a copy of it online, or they've downloaded it and were able to actually put it out to burn it onto a Blu-ray player. Then they'll use a printer to do off a some artwork for it. Put it in a case. Some people do them up really nicely. They'll use like one of the different like media player type things where you can actually put in like a menus, like screen selection, that type of stuff. And but other times it's going to be as bare bones as you get. And I don't personally have any real bootlegs in my collection right now. Now, if there came out like a show that I really wanted, and there was no physical media release of it, and I had a choice between getting a really good bootleg Blu-ray from a fairly legit source or a streaming version of it from the actual source, um, that that presents a little bit of a problem because I try not to buy streaming copies of anything if I don't if I can help it. I have if I've already had the film usually. So I picked up Reanimator from Arrow Video, and they had an Arrow Video sale that had Reanimator, the streaming version of it, the digital version. So I bought that because one of the discs wasn't included in my Reanimator. So just so I could watch the other version of that film, so I bought it from iTunes during one of those Arrow carnage sales. But I don't normally like to buy streaming, and I'll tell you why. Because some people will look at streaming, they'll say, okay, if they see that people are buying a lot of streaming, then maybe that's going to make them put out a physical copy of that. I don't think so. I think if they're doing well on something streaming, it's going to do the opposite. They're not going to want to put out a physical copy of that disc. So I can't rightfully support the streaming portion of it because I don't buy the argument that if enough people buy it streaming, that's going to make them do physical. I think that if enough people buy it streaming, that's going to make them not do it physical. I think they'll just say, okay, well, we can make all this money on the streaming portion of it. Why do we need to put out, I'm not sure, 30 kinds on Blu-ray? That's probably on Blu-ray already. Or why do we need to put out like WandaVision? And I really liked WandaVision. That was one of my favorite like Disney shows that came out. And, and I would love to have a physical media copy of that. I am not a person that would ever spend much on a bootleg because at the end of the day, it's still a bootleg. Mid-level Media mentioned in his that when he was putting he was reorganizing his Blu-rays, and he took the bootlegs that was given him by somebody else, and he said, "Do I put these into my regular Blu-ray collection, or do I keep them separate?" And at the end of the day, he said, "No, I'm going to put them in with my regular collection. I can't do that. That I'm way too OCD for stuff like that. I If I had a bootleg of something, it could not be in with my regular collection because I don't see it as legit. It's like if you back in the day, remember what's the name of those places? Like the Pirate Bay is still a thing, right? Pirate Bay and like Mini Nova and places like that. Remember those? I think a lot of them are gone. Pirate Bay still around, I think. But you'd have something that you couldn't find, and you'd have a burn. Most people making selling boots aren't very noble, unfortunately. About one that had frame rate issues and the seller was a real jerk about it. I'm not surprised. That's the thing, because you're hitting upon um, that aspect of the digest, because you're going to, I guess, because none of it, it's not legal. I'm going to guess. So we're going along the idea of like, of you're hitting at the black market, and you can get some amazing stuff on like, I guess, the black market. Like say you get, but you always gotta take it as this. Take it as like, hey, you can get this PS5 for a decent price, but fell off a truck. You know what I mean? To give you a good an analogy. I'm not sure if it's a good analogy or not, but to give you an analogy. So when you work with something like that, there's no big, returns. It's getting it out there. It's a one and done type of deal. It's the same thing I find with a lot of the bootlegger people out there. And I get shocked. I go onto like legitimate Facebook sites that sell like movies and Blu-rays and stuff like that, or even like sites that are like our fan groups. And I'm always blown away when I go on there and I see somebody that's like just blatantly selling like bootleg copies of stuff that is not available, and copies of stuff that sometimes are available. That's what really pisses me off. That's the thing that I'm not cool with. If there's a legitimate like real, if Vinegar Syndrome or Arrow or Indicator puts out a really good edition of something, and I see a bootlegger also putting out their own edition of something, that is not cool. That's when that's slimy territory. If they're putting out stuff that's not available and stuff that's only streaming, I get that. I completely get that. I think Medieval Media mentioned Barbarian, which is a perfectly great example of this. Barbarian was a fantastic film done by Zach Kreger, from Whitest Kids You Know. Actually, it was the director was from the group Whitest Kids You Know. It was a great film. There is no physical release. There is no physical release of Prey yet. From it's a Predator film without a physical release. Boots said the theatrical versions of the original Star Wars trilogy are masterfully done. They're a must for me because my dad worked. Your dad worked on the. That is amazing, dude. I agree. Now there is something. Hey, Kaz, welcome. There is something that I think, if there's ever a bootleg that I'm going to spend actual money on, it's this right here. For those that don't know, I'm 52 this year. I saw the original Star Wars films in the theater. I'm that age. I'm the guy that went and saw them all in theater back when they came out. I'm also the guy that got extremely peeved when George Lucas started changing everything. So would I buy like bootlegs or theatrical versions of the original Star Wars trilogy? No. Yeah, it's not out there. Star Wars Holiday Special. It's not out there. It's probably not coming out for a while. If they put out a release of the Star Wars Holiday Special or a release of the theatrical versions of the original Star Wars trilogy, would I buy them? Immediately. Me and my better half are huge Star Wars fans. One Christmas, we spent like an entire day watching the entire Star Wars trilogy. But with it not being out there, if they put it out as streaming on like iTunes, would I pick that up rather than the bootleg edition of that same thing? No, because I do want a physical copy that I can have in my hands. I don't want on streaming, because here's the thing: at the end of the day, it's not yours. It can change. Right issues can happen. Music issues can happen. Just look at Friday the 13th right now. Friday the 13th had a big lawsuit between Victor Miller and the director, and it caused everything Friday the 13th to shut down. The actual video game Friday the 13th got really affected by this. They couldn't do downloads anymore. They ended up having to cancel that game. You can still buy the game, but I don't think there's a server hosting it. So you just got to kind of make your own like group when it comes to the Friday the 13th game. You can't actually go on servers anymore for that. That's because rights issues happen. And rights issues can happen unless you physically own a copy of a movie. Here, let me give you an example. This is the DVD Ghost Keeper by Code Red. It is the 30th anniversary edition DVD. There's a Blu-ray copy of this out there as well. There's a sale on about the DVD. This is a exploitation film. If, for instance, James Makachuk, who directed the film and wrote the film, so that's not a great example, and say maybe the guys that did the music for this one right here had issues with one another, and they had to take out the soundtrack. I can't remember soundtrack's any good to this movie, by the way. Then if it was streaming, then that would be replaced with generic music. They can do that. If all of a sudden, let's say James Makachuk wrote this and somebody else directed it. Let's say Joe Blow directed it. Joe Blow and James Makachuk have like a falling out, and a lawsuit comes. All of a sudden, that movie is no longer available. So unless you got it and you download it, there's a good chance that all of a sudden you're getting a credit for a movie that you used to own, or they're taking things out, or they're changing things. TV is a great example of that. All right. WKRP in Cincinnati was a TV series centered around a radio station in Cincinnati, WKRP. Because of that, it utilized a lot of music in its day. When Shout Factory put out the release of WKRP in Cincinnati, they could not clear all the music. So some music had to be replaced with generic alternatives. There are places online that apparently you can get the original versions of WKRP and Happy Days, which was another one where that happened, well, by the way, with the music that it originally had in it. So then you come to the question of asking yourself, does the music that's within this matter enough? Because there is a physical release out now. So you got a legitimate physical release. And here's my question for you guys. You have a legitimate physical release of something out there, like a Shout Factory or one of the Paramount, like Days for Lives, Happy Days. Do you buy the physical release, or do you get the bootleg release with the original music? A film that had that issue was Return of the Living Dead. Now, I'm lucky in that I got my Return of the Living Dead from Second Sight, which back in the day in a steelbook. What that meant is that every song that was in the original Return of the Living Dead is on my Blu-ray release. If you picked up the Shout Factory, Scream Factory release of Return of the Living Dead, that's not the case. You're missing at least one or two songs from the film. They've been switched out for something else. There wasn't Shout's fault or Scream Factory's fault. Basically, it's what they had to do. So there's my question to you. What do you do when the music is different? Do you buy the release and buy the other release? It's something to think about. That's where things get to be not so cut and dry. I always want to have the legit version of a film in my collection. I always want to have the Indicator or the Arrow or the Scream Factory or the Vinegar Syndrome or the Severin in my collection. I always want to have the Shout in my collection. I collect a lot of TV. So I would appreciate when something comes along like Miami Vice and all the original music is there, every single bit of it, and it's expensive. So when Miami Vice came out on Blu-ray and DVD, I knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of features because all the money had gone in to acquiring the music. Now there's ones recently came out like Dawson's Creek, which is a great set, which I love. But that being said, not all the music is in the set because they could not get the rights to all the music. Happy Days literally stopped releasing seasons of it. All the seasons have not been released for Happy Days. Why? Because of the music rights issues with Happy Days caused them to not sell that well. So it comes down to that as well. Like it could be really cut and easy, and I could tell you, okay, physical release from company, good, bootleg release, bad. But there's more to it. Exactly. Love at First Bite had music right issues as well. I'm pretty sure the song is the one in the disco, right? I love the nightlife. I love the boogie. That's the one, right? Initially, I know initially, especially on the VHS version, they did. So a lot of these questions presume that a legit version is funneling profits to all the people who deserve it. Sadly, from working in the industry, you know that often goes to questionable places. Again, another extremely important thing to look at as well. If one of the reasons I get asked, why do I tend to buy more from like a company as opposed to maybe like Amazon a lot of the times? Because I hope that at least if I buy an Indicator Hammer release, for instance, that's an older release, right? Then I know most of that profits is going to Indicator and whatever rights holders are there. So that's going to forward more releases like I want to get. So that's why there's 6 volumes of Hammer stuff out there, because people bought stuff. Sometimes you pick up from Amazon or pick it from like more dodgy place. You don't exactly know who you're paying to, where the rights are, where the who holds the rights. Do the right people hold the rights? And are they getting the money the way they're supposed to? You go back to things like Night of the Living Dead and how many like unlegitimate, like shitty copies of Night of the Living Dead right there. Like, let's face it, that was one of those that anybody could put out. You could legit put out if you had, uh, you know, $50. You could release a copy of Night. You could find a copy of Night of the Living Dead online and release it. Every company and every bootleg company and shoddy company had a version of Night of the Living Dead out there because they could, because there were no rights to Night of the Living Dead. Now we all got the Criterion version because it's Criterion version. It's going to be superior. So there's no real easy answer. And I can't give you an easy answer and say, oh, you should or shouldn't do this. And to be totally honest, who am I to tell you what you should or shouldn't do? Yeah. Thank you. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one that is very famous, or infamous, I guess is the right word there, death bomb, for rights holders, just being the mob or something like that. Yeah, it caused issues between the director and some of the cast. So that's why in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, you're not getting everybody coming back to do it. Not because, oh, look, all these characters are dead and look, Leatherface is coming back. No, there was issues. As far as I know, that's what's been put out there, is that there was issues that some shady people own the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it Tobe Hooper made very little off it. The actors made very little off it, and some of them were very salty towards Tobe because of it. Tobe or Toby, I'm never quite sure. And those are things to think about. Who are you supporting? I'm good at supporting a good company putting it out. But bootlegs, at the end of the day, if it's something that's not out there, if something that's not on physical media, I wouldn't particularly spend a lot of money for it, unless it's something if it was Star Wars, I might. If it was a TV show that didn't come out, I might. If it was a TV show and the music was different, I might actually get both versions, because I have a big guilt complex, so I would have to, because that's just me. One of my early videos on here, like a very early video, I had ordered some movies, and I was so excited because they were like these Criterion movies. They were movies I was really excited to get. Spirit of the Beehive, something like that. There's like 3 or 4 of them, and I got them from eBay. And they were harder to find at the time. I was so excited. I got them come. I think I unboxed them. I did an unboxing video. You could not see the disappointment on my face when I opened up the eBay, and it wasn't Criterion releases. They were knockoff bootleg releases. And these were legit films that were out there. I felt completely ripped off. I was crushed because these were films that I really wanted. And to this day, it soured me so much, not just on that experience that I don't use eBay very much anymore, but on those films that I just haven't rebought the films. I haven't bought the films, or even watched those. Those aren't even in my collection anymore, because basically it was a really bad experience. And just looking at those films make me think about that experience of getting these like shoddy bootlegs and getting ripped off. But most of the times nowadays, when somebody's saying, hey, I got a bootleg something, they know that they've gotten a bootleg of a film. They know that it's out there. So I can't say like, okay, don't buy bootlegs of anything. I would love for there to be physical copies of everything out there. I can't tell you that if you buy a streaming version of it, that means that there's going to be physical media release coming down the road because you bought a streaming version. I don't think that's the case. I think it's the opposite. And there's been some amazing videos on here that you can watch when it comes to talking about bootlegs. There has been, and I'll mention them again, Mid-Level Media. The last video I watched on this. Films at Home. AJ's Movie Place. Did some great stuff when it comes to talking about bootlegs. The thing that I wanted to do that hopefully was different enough for this is to come on here and talk to you guys live about it rather than like just pre-tape my video and just give you my thoughts on it. I wanted to get your thoughts as well. I wanted to make this an interactive experience when it comes to this because I can tell you what I think, but I want to know what you think. I want to know your thoughts on this. One thing I feel for certain about is that I can't primarily be cynical as a buyer. I support legit versions with the vast majority of my money. Exactly. We're in the same camp. If there is a, let's get another release. Here's one that went out of print that they're putting back in print. This is Runaway Nightmare. It was put out by Vinegar Syndrome, Mike Cartel. So this one legitimately went out of print. I bought it just before it went out of print, thanks to a good friend of mine, Stephanie Crawford, who kind of gave me a heads up on it. This is coming out again now on Blu-ray actually, and I think it's maybe it's Trauma. I think it's Trauma putting it out. So you legitimately can buy this movie. So there is absolutely no reason to go out and buy a bootleg copy of Mike Cartel's Runaway Nightmare. You can get it for a really good price. When it's a TV show like The Mandalorian, or I'm just using this, or the movie Barbarian or Prey, those don't have physical releases yet. I do think that something like Prey should be something that gets a physical release. I could be surprised if it didn't. If it's something that you're sure is getting a physical release, there's no reason to buy a bootleg. If Terrifier 2 is a good example of that. It is it's an indie movie that did really well. I hope that people that own Terrifier 2 in their collection, like me, for instance, have the actual physical copy of it. And I know that it was hard to get for a little bit, that it would go to Walmart and it would sell out, especially the Blu-ray. You'd find the DVD copy, which is what I ended up getting because the Blu-ray just was impossible to get. But I didn't go out and buy a bootleg version of sorry, of the movie. It's out from, you can buy it at Walmart. You can go buy a big special edition of it from Umbrella Entertainment. Like those are the movies, and that's the type of things that you want to support. When you don't want to get a bootleg of Terrifier 2. That literally does take away from the people that are making the film. And then you don't get Terrifier 3. If it's Disney and they've put a hard line into streaming. Now, the good news on this side of things is, I think Middle of the Meeting mentioned Touchstone Pictures, is that Disney has mentioned recently that they may be bringing out some of the stuff that has gone out of print or stuff that's not out anymore. Not Disney films, but like Touchstone Pictures, stuff like that, on getting physical releases. So that's good. That's stuff that you that you want to see. My thoughts on this is, if you can't get it on physical media, then just make sure who you get it from. But if you can get the physical version, get the physical version. If you've bought something that's bootleg, you do you. But for me, if I buy something that's bootleg and it gets physical release later on, I want that release. Because at the end of the day, the quality of that release isn't going to stand the test of time. It rarely ever does. I'm going to give you the most heartbreaking scenario that I can. One of my favorite shows of all time growing up was a show called Dark Shadows. Came on before I was born. I watched it in reruns, and got like episodes on VHS and stuff like that on tape back when they were putting them out. Eventually, Dark Shadows came out with an amazing coffin box set. You got a autographed photo of Jonathan Freed, and you got a nice booklet talking about all the episodes and a bunch of special features. As a surprise for me, for my birthday one year, my better half found and spent a nice bit of money on the box set, coffin box set of Dark Shadows. We're talking years ago. Unfortunately, Shortly after I got the set and unboxed it and everything like that, I got some messages letting me know that it wasn't the legit set, that somebody had sent me a, pretty much, I guess, a fake, a knockoff. So I tirelessly went through the discs. I was worried. My better half had spent a lot of money on that, and I didn't tell her. I didn't want to tell her. I knew she would be hurt. I turned comments off on that video so that she would know. And it was about a year or so later that I actually let her know. The set worked pretty good, but I know eventually it's a, you know, it's a, it's a dodgy release. Not expecting for it to last a long time. So what I did, I took every one of them and I ripped them to things just to make sure that I have them there. And when I can get it, when I can find it, and when I can afford it, I will eventually be able to buy the real release of the film. Hey, Maddie, welcome, man. I've been finding bootlegs, DVDs at a local thrift store numerous times with computer printed labels and homemade burn copies. Wonder what these just don't hit the trash bin on arrival. I think they don't even look when it comes to that type of stuff. And yeah, that's part of the Mill Creek deal. I'm actually I have a little bit of a bias, Death Bomb, because I do review for Mill Creek. But that being said, when I do, I let you know whether I actually like it or not. But I'm hoping it does some good stuff. With Mill Creek, the thing is, they're not remasters. They put out the copy that they're given. So if they're given a good copy, you're going to get a good copy. If they're given a copy that's not perfect, then it's not going to be perfect. But it's not just Mill Creek that when it comes to that. I have a setup there that I spent a lot of money for called the Godzilla, Showa era from Criterion. And that was exactly the same thing. The Criterion could only put out the masters that Toho gave them. So were the perfect masters? No, not at all. Actually, they're definitely good and watchable, but they could have done more. They could have been remastered. More could have been done, but Criterion legitimately couldn't do it because because Toho wouldn't let them do it. Sometimes that's what happens. Is that a company says, okay, we're going to give you these films, and sometimes you got the full rights, you got they remaster them, they get the OC and all that type of stuff. Other times companies just say, okay, we want to get our media out there. Here's the print. Here's what you get. So there's another thing right there. And that comes to the question. That brings up a question here that middle of the media mentioned. I wish he was here actually. I'd bring him right in. That when you're buying something from a thrift store or the Salvation Army or someplace like that, you're not actually buying from the company, and it's not really supporting the people either. So there's that as well. If you're going to use the argument that when you buy a movie, it supports the other movies coming out. Hey, Scotty, welcome, man. Then you got to also take into consideration, does it though all the time? Because if it goes to a consignment store, or it's at a place like maybe a Giant Tiger or Vega Village or somewhere like that, then they've bought it at warehouses, and then that means that any money that Blu-ray or DVD is going to make for anybody, that's been made. So that's why you can see them sometimes sell them out for like really cheap prices, because at the end of the day, what's happened is they've bought off like a very village. Say somebody passes away, they'll get somebody's entire collection brought in. Places like Giant Tiger or places like that will sometimes bring in the buy at a warehouse, or Dollaramas. They'll buy at warehouses and get like you'll just get whatever's in there, and then they can like price it accordingly, because they've bought at a warehouse for an extremely cheap amount. They can price it a little bit like more expensive at first, and then like slowly weed the price down. And even when they're selling at $1 or $2, they're making a profit on it, a pretty good profit too. So when it gets to that point, you're also not supporting the people that legit supporting the people that did it. For me, it's having the physical media release, the legit release in my hand. I can't put non-legit releases with legit releases. I just can't do that. Do I want like do I want Barbarian in my collection? Do I want like Falcon Winter Soldier in my collection? I really do, and I hope there's a physical media release coming out. But if not, uh, I want it. No, I think I'll 100% hard line on this one. Like, don't throw them out. Resell 'em. Like, always resell them. When I give that analogy, I'm just kind of like playing devil's advocate. That if you're going to use like the example of saying like I have to buy this release because it supports like the people that worked on it. And if I buy a bootleg, it doesn't support the people that worked on it. Then you got to take the other things into consideration as well. You got to take, okay, did you buy it from the people? Did you buy it from a store that bought it from the people? Did you buy it from a thrift store? I buy a lot of things from thrift stores. So does that always support the people that made the movie? Uh, no, but at the end of the day, too, if I buy a Blu-ray or a DVD from a thrift store, like say about a Criterion something at a thrift shop, and I never bought a Criterion before, that's gonna, and you get it, and you're like, wow, these are really good. Um, I'm gonna go and buy more Criterions from Criterion. So I think it makes you want to buy legitimate copies of something from the place. But that's what it gets down what it comes down to is does it support or does it cause support for something else? If you buy Barbarian on bootleg and then you don't buy Barbarian if it comes out on Blu-ray, that you do you. Me, I would. If you buy something that and I just don't see it as streaming. Hi Warlock, welcome man. If you show a movie to your friends and they love the movie, the chances of increasing sales also increases. Exactly. Um, Death Bomb, yeah, and runs a really good music label too. On a music label, don't have the rights to allow the older releases anymore, but no one is currently releasing them. If a fan can find one of the older releases used, they should definitely buy it. 100%. A lot of my movies, I got like I've not everything here because a lot of this stuff, I got from the places, but I got like 12 plastic totes of DVDs at the farm. And I'd say around 60% of those were bought at thrift shops. So I will always, when I can, choose physical media over streaming because that's me. I'm a physical media guy. Movies, books. I don't have the Marvel or DC app, but I do buy the omnibuses when they come out. Exactly. You have to buy where you can. And as a collector, 9 chances out of 10, if you're a collector, you're collecting a lot of this stuff. You've put in the money, the time, and the effort to support the companies and the creators. If you have a couple bootlegs in your collection or stuff from thrift stores, that's because you can't just buy. You can't just go buy. If you can, fantastic, wonderful, fantastic. You've got lots of money. You can do it. You can buy the all the all the actual releases that are out there that as possible. That is great. Majority of us, we've got a threshold. We got a budget. So support when you can, buy what you want, and buy when you can. I don't agree with buying bootlegs of movies that are out and got like good releases. Nothing more frustrating than desiring something and not being able to get a physical release. It hurts the creators. The word doesn't get spread. Exactly. If people hadn't seen some of the movies that are out there, if people hadn't seen Terrifier, um, there would not have been a Terrifier 2. If people hadn't seen Terrifier 2, there would not be a Terrifier 3 coming out. If that hadn't gotten like some physical releases, Hey, Stephanie, welcome, man. Exactly, 100%. The Devils is one I actually mentioned you earlier. Is a perfect example of a film that doesn't have an uncut release. Now, I have right now a cut BFI edition of The Devils on DVD. If I come across an uncut Blu-ray edition of The Devils on bootleg, am I going to buy this? No. Yes, of course I am. It's a fantastic film, and it should have an uncut release out there. It is actually frustrating that it doesn't. The Devils, the original Star Wars trilogy, uh, unaltered, all things that you want to see get physical releases. And if they don't, then if somebody comes along and does that, fantastic. Here's another example for you. I have Waterworld because I'm actually a fan of that film. I know I'm weird, but the Ulysses cut, the biggest cut of Waterworld, it's literally it was put together. It was kind of a bootleg thing. So where somebody went out and took Waterworld and put all the TV stuff from Waterworld and all the stuff that was cut and put as much of it together as possible and made a big cut called the Ulysses cut. For the longest time, you could only find that online. Nightbreed was another example. Nightbreed was another film that you could find uncut versions of it online, but you couldn't for the longest time find a physical media release of the uncut version. Horror films are a fantastic genre for that example. There are so many people that go out and put together uh, special cuts of a film, the like unaltered cuts with scenes that have gone missing, cuts that puts the TV stuff back in, that puts these big cuts. See, but the thing is, the problem with just streaming the Devils is as long as there's people out there that are just streaming it, we're never going to get a physical release of it. You need to Instagram and tweet out that you want a physical release. You need to talk to companies and go on forums and let people know that you want to release because buying streaming copies of something or even seeing streaming copies of something like will literally tell them you're okay with that. You've been placated. Would I get Song of the South, the Disney one? Um, no, probably not. I mean, not really. I'm a little older. It's like there's certain movies that don't come out for different reasons, right? Like, but I understand. Copy I bought from Amazon a few months back is bootleg. It depends. Like, it can happen that like when you see like I've gotten stuff before, and I've had to look at it like, did I get did I get ripped off? Friend I made blues of the original version, Watch from the Woods, gave them to friends, but didn't want to deal with selling bootlegs. Understandable. Like that one wasn't out there. So to find the original version of films that haven't been released, I I did that a long, long time ago. Or no, I mean, somebody I knew did that a long, long time ago for a film that wasn't out there. And afterwards, it came out, and we all bought it. The movie was Convoy. For the longest time, getting Convoy was really hard to do. So what I did was I found Convoy, a VHS Convoy. It was a rare one at the time, and I put it on DVD. And then the second Convoy got announced and got a release, and it's not the greatest movie, by the way, guys. I went out and I picked it up and I grabbed it, and so did everybody that had the bootleg copy of it because they wanted to have that film in their collection. It was one of those like, oh my god, I can't believe it's coming out. And there's always those releases that we get nowadays, like where we're shocked that this movie is finally getting a release. Uh, and I don't think anybody that I know that collects physical media is gonna be like, oh, well, yeah, it's getting a release with lots of special features and looking really nice. But maybe this burnt off bootleg is good enough. That's not usually how it happens. That's realistically isn't what happens. The people that are collecting now, that are collecting and are going out of their way to get something that's not out there, aren't people that are casuals. They're not people that are okay, this is good enough. We're not at that stage anymore. If we were at that stage, you go to your local Walmart, buy lots of movies. You go to your local Best Buy, lots of movies. You can't. You have to go online, go to Amazon, or go to one of the companies when they're every month, or go on during the sale for Vinegar Syndrome number 7 or Arrow Indicator, and get their stuff. Because the people that buy releases nowadays on a now by far and large, by the big releases, buy films that are not out there, aren't people that are buying films just to have a copy in their collection. They are always going to want to have the good version in their collection. That's why 4K can come out now and do well and replace some Blu-rays, because their collectors are going to look and decide that, okay, I got this, but I want to upgrade to this. I don't see many people thinking, oh well, I've got a bootleg Blu-ray of Prey, the Predator movie. I really liked it, by the way. Um, and all of a sudden Disney comes out with a nice edition of it, or they get another company to bring it out. You're going to replace that bootleg. You are going to buy Prey. Availability, big issue. It very much is. Back in the early aughts, I ordered Battle Royale from eBay when it was banned in the US. I need to watch it. It was a bootleg. Didn't even realize it until you got it. That's true. Tiny stack of bootlegs from Spanish Amazon. I'll either have no release or long out of print and are not re-released on eBay and go for a crazy price. I can name you one movie right now that isn't out there, that you'd either have to find from another country if it's available, or you'd have to buy bootleg. It's a movie called Necronomicon. It was a anthology film, a portmanteau. It starred Jeffrey Combs and had a cousin H.P. Lovecraft. I haven't seen this movie since the VHS days. I saw it once, and it was here in Morocco, and it was only in French. There was no English version of it there. I asked the guy, I said, before I buy this, because I bought the Cold Prey trilogy, and the third one wasn't on Blu-ray or DVD. And so I bought it. It was completely in French. I gave it to a friend of mine. Not a bootleg, but So when I went back to the store, I said, "Can you check Necronomicon for me, because I really want this movie, and I hope this isn't just in French. I can't speak French." So surprisingly, they opened up the movie, they checked it, and he said, "No, don't buy it. It's just French." Let's Scare Jessica. Same. I had a bootleg version of Let's Scare Jessica to Death. Now I have the Scream Factory edition of Let's Scare Jessica to Death, and I was so excited to get that. It's never along the lines of like, well, I got this bootleg one. It's good enough. No, I mean, like, even like in the days of the pirate days of the internet, when everything was downloaded, and we all know, like, we know, or we did that at sometimes. There's always going to be movies that fall through the cracks. So you're there, you're trying to get stuff there. Longest time, if you wanted to get Tenebrae, you got Unsane, and it was a cut version of Tenebrae in North America. That's what you got. You didn't get the uncut version, you got a cut version. So if you wanted to see it uncut, you ordered Video Search Miami, and you found it online. But when you had the option to buy something, like the uncut version, you bought it. There are tons of movies that fall through the gaps, and streaming services made that worse. They own and won't release physical releases of things. Some are guaranteed never to get one too. That is true. And the even worse, Warlock, is when you have places that get acquired, like HBO Max, because I'm not going to call it Max. That's a crappy name. Shows, it's not just shows that are streaming and you're like, well, I'll watch the streaming version. Sometimes they go away. You're not assured that you're going to have the streaming version to watch online all the time either. When a company gets acquired, when different things go out there, Disney has the rights and owns all those cool Netflix shows. A lot of them that didn't get released, physical releases. Hey there, Sarah. Welcome. 19, exactly. Bootleg's a placeholder. That's perfect. because that's exactly what it is. Rights go away. Shows just get taken off the air because they no longer want to pay to have those shows streaming anymore. They don't want to pay for the rights to those shows. As a Marvel fan, yeah, you never get physical releases of Punisher or Daredevil season 3 plus. It's true. Does that mean that I would buy a bootleg copy? Yeah, because I really like those shows. Warlock. Um, Punisher had 2 seasons. Neither one of them are going to get a physical release. I got all the Punisher movies here on 4K, except for the Dolph Lundgren one, which I'm waiting to get from Umbrella. There you go. Streaming versions get changed. Music gets changed. Things get altered. The original Star Wars trilogy, not despecialized and nice. Just someone who took the original 35mm print, put it on disc, scratches and all. It's lovely. And I doubt Disney Plus is going to provide that. They are not going to provide that. And you know what? I bet you that if they did, me and you would be the first people in line to grab it. So I am not going to tell you, get here and tell you, no, don't buy bootlegs of anything. Because I know that 99.9% of you are going to buy bootleg of something that's not out there. And if it comes out, you're going to replace it. So me telling you, looking at you and saying, don't ever buy a bootleg of anything is unrealistic. And it's not fair. Because it comes down to the thing of wanting the better copy of something. Here we go. Mentioned right there. Silent Night, Deadly Night. For the longest time, you could only buy the Canadian edition of Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, 4, and 5 on DVD. It wasn't the best quality. I know. I bought it. So when it eventually came out on Blu-ray from Vestron, I now have that in my collection too. Nice. So despecialized means basically George Lucas, when he started re-putting out the Star Wars films, he started changing them. Like the Han Solo shoots first thing, or like putting all these like different like alien creatures in the background that just don't look right, or the change scenes in the film, change music. You can't get like Star Wars the way it was originally shown in the theater, Caesar, anymore. Unfortunately, on like anywhere, not on Blu-ray, not on DVD. There were, I think, there was for a short period of time. There was like a Laserdisc edition, if you were lucky enough to get it. So in order to get the original version of Star Wars, the theater version, because that's not what's on, that's not on. If you go to Disney Plus, that's not on there. If you buy the Blu-ray or the box set, that's not on there. So the only way to see it is to find a bootleg copy of the original Star Wars. Special edition is not usually a dirty word, but in this case it is. Yeah, 35mm scans are amazing. Show them at a movie night, people literally cry, think they would never see them again. That is incredible. Like, I grew up with Star Wars, guys. I saw the first movie in theater around 3 or 4 times. I remember being in Ontario and my good friend Clark, we were in elementary school and we would go out on our lunch breaks and take sticks and do lightsaber battles. That's what you do. You're a kid. So when it comes out and it's not what you remember, and the changes are not just small changes, but some pretty drastic changes. Oh, anytime, man. That is what I'm here for. Then you want to look for what you saw when you were a kid. That's why I mentioned early on, I grew up watching shows like Happy Days. When Happy Days came out on DVD, I bought the first couple seasons, and almost all the music was changed. I bought Booker PI, the complete series, thinking, okay, this is fantastic. I used to watch the spinoff of 21 Jump Street. It was okay. I turned it on, and 10 seconds in, I was like, "What the hell is this?" Like, the theme music was gone, like, Hot in the City, Billy Idol's Hot in the City was not playing, which is the theme music for Booker, by the way. This generically bad, horrible, horrible music, which ruined the opening of the TV show, was there in place of it. I was extremely disappointed, and I did go and look for it, elsewhere with the original music. Here's another one for you, TV-wise. Wise Guy. Wise Guy, this series is out there. You can get almost every episode of Wise Guy, which was one of my favorite shows. But you know what you can't get? The Dead Dog Records episodes of Wise Guy. Those were really good. You had like, I think it was like Debbie Harry was in those. They were based on like their music centric episodes, and they have never been put on given a physical release. There's some rights issues with music, so the only way you can find them is to find bootlegs of them or to find them online, because that doesn't exist, and it won't. Surprise movie creators allow for streaming only. It ensures the eventual I'm gonna get that right. Disappearance of the creation. Just seems like a bad deal. I think for a lot of them, it depends on what they're given, and if you're given the chance to get your film put out there, even if it's just streaming, as opposed to not getting any type of release at all, they got to go if they want to keep making films. I guess they got to go to where the money's at, so that they make enough money off of it, so that they can go forward to make something else. Exactly. It's okay to have special editions of something as long as a regular edition is out there. See, I don't mind the Vestron I think the picture quality is much better than the DVDs. So they're that much right now. If you have the DVDs, you know what I'm talking. There you go. Perfect example. Star Wars release could learn something from Blade Runner. How many units that would sell? 4K scans of the original Star Wars cuts. I have the Blade Runner like DVD case. It's why I buy things. It's why I buy things now. Why I'll always buy physical releases, and why I always feel good about buying physical releases of something. Even physical releases, you're not sure how long things are going to be in print, how limited things are going to be. I've seen movies go to print, and I'd rather buy a bootleg of something that's not available than not be able to buy it at all or see it 5 or 10 years down the road. Right now, we got the streaming wars, and what that means is we've got a lot of streaming sites out there: Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime, so many others. Do I think every one of them is going to last? I really don't. I think it's like everything else. It's a war, and in wars there are victors and there are losers. And when one streaming service goes and the other streaming service buys it up, they cherry pick. What does that mean? That means that as there becomes less streaming services or become more consolidated streaming services, you're going to see less than you initially did. Do you know that I saw the Nuns of St. Valentine's, something like that on Netflix originally before I bought the Kino release? That was a Netflix. That showed on Netflix. That movie, The Sinful Nuns of St. Valentine's, showed on Netflix. If you can, let that sink in for a second. Thank you. Yes, please hit the like, share, subscribe. All the goodness that helps out. I want to see that happen too. I grew up with this show. Are you Canadian, Joseph? Hilarious House of Frightenstein, by the way, guys, was a series with the amazing Vincent Price and Billy Van playing most of the characters, actually. It was a show that came on every morning when I was a kid. Movie lovers, the landscape is so chaotic and uncertain right now, but we're also so beyond spoiled for choice. It's really interesting. It is literally the golden age of collecting. And it's so weird because we're at a point where where there used to be a lot of stuff in your local brick and mortar stores. You used to be able to go in to your local Walmart and you'd see like rows of movies. Go to your Best Buy, lots of movies would be there. Big movie sales during Black Friday and stuff like that. But when online became reality, when companies could sell their own stuff, when Amazon started doing that, and when brick and mortar stores realized that physical media takes up a lot of space and they could use that portion of the real estate for something that gives back more of a return, then it made it a lot easier to go out and buy online. So it made a lot of people think, especially people that didn't look, like, oh my God, look, this is the downfall of physical media. And then we saw streaming sites like physical media is no more, but it's not actually. It's probably more prevalent than it has ever been. And it's really up to us to keep it that way. There you go, man. Larry's House of Friends is being released by Unearthed Films. I remember there was like a short release that was out there. I'm not sure how it was released before, but it went out of print really, really quickly. So this is a golden, amazing time for physical media. We have a lot of things that's out there that we can buy and get, but not everything is out there to buy and get. If you want Star Wars original, if you want the Devils, if you want the Marvel shows, if you want Barbarian, 9 chances out of 10, you're gonna have to go into the vast wasteland of the bootleg area to get that stuff. Here's a good point. Warner Brothers saving cuts are scary. Would have thought it would put such a strong brand as HBO in a better position, but it's not. Yes, all right. I used to live in Toronto. Muffet Unearthed announced it over the lockdown. Muffet Babies, which I love, by the way. Yeah. Yeah, like there's so much that's out there, but there's so much we still have to get. And I guess that's at the end of the day, like just over an hour, this is where I'll leave it for you all to think about. Um, for me, final thoughts is if I can't get the release that I want on physical media, I will buy a release that I really like. I will buy a bootleg. And if eventually that movie comes out, if I buy a bootleg of The Devils uncut and Criterion or Indicator, Arrow announce that The Devils is coming out uncut with a special edition, I will buy that. I will day one buy that. Henry says the one thing I can tell you, and I'll end this here, as a collector, or I like to say curator now, as opposed to collector, because collector means you're going to grab everything, right? When I think collector, I mean like, oh, I got to have all those spine numbers. I've got to the point where like I only got so much real estate in my house, so I got to curate. Is that nothing makes it more glaringly obvious to you of what you don't have as a collector than when you look at your shelf and see all the stuff that you do have. Because when you look at all the stuff that you do have and you're going through and you see something like, oh, I don't have this one, it stands out more. If you walk to a shop back in the day and you saw one of the Lucio Fulci films, you're like, okay, that's fantastic. That's one part of the Gates Hell trilogy. If you look in your shelf and you see 2 of the Gates Hell trilogy and you don't have the third one, you're, there's that empty spot, man. You're going to pick it up. My name is Aaron. Thank you so much for joining me today here in the Cult of Cinema. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Share it and put a thumbs up. I want to give a big shout out to Mid-Level Media, to Films at Home, and to AJ's Movie Palace, who actually talked about this as well. When is Disney's 1000 Part 2 Blu-ray? I'm not sure about that one, actually. Again, I had a lot of fun myself here, and guys, I will see you soon, right here in the Cult of Cinema.